Yes, indeed. The sounds of the Dark Side of Phobos OC remix, well worth checking out. I would strongly recommend you go there right now, doom.ocremix.org. It's made entirely of Win and Awesome. That was a mix of Rotaka, the Chemical Imps. That was from the map, I believe it was E1M3, yes it was. And then, of course, the classic Evil Horde, Hangamageddon, E1M1. Love it. Doom music for the win. You listen to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. Now, a few things to talk to you about. There should be a WoW Radio presence at BlizzCon over in, I believe it's, what is it, the 3rd to the 4th or whatever. We will be there. I sadly will not. I, quite frankly, can't afford to fly. Right now, we're in a situation where we've been left hanging by Blizzard to the point where we can't even guarantee we can do anything. It's really quite sad, because I know for a fact that a certain other podcast managed to get themselves a table, no problem whatsoever, and yet we did not. Why, I really don't know. I'm not going to second guess as to why this is. But needless to say, it is unlikely at this point that we'll be broadcasting live. However, we do intend to get some archive footage out to you. That's our intention. You never know, we might be able to. It might be a last-minute thing. WoW Radio is very good at doing last-minute stuff. But right now, you know, Blizzard's not really being all that helpful in that respect. So, we're still looking for cash, though. We're looking for cash specifically so that we can buy a couple of cameras and a little bit of equipment so that we can actually get some good, solid, quality broadcast footage out to you. That would be nice. I'd love to. So, what do we need? We need donations. Now, you can donate via PayPal at wowradiodonations@gmail.com. wowradiodonations@gmail.com. As you're probably also aware, it runs the cost of our server. We do get some small amount of money from advertising, and we do thank our advertising sponsors for that, but generally speaking, the station's been run by you guys. So if you want to donate, feel free. wowradiodonations@gmail.com. There'll be a donation drive going over the next week, some very special events happening, no doubt. So stay tuned to that. PayPal donations, wowradiodonations@gmail.com. Every little helps, and of course, donators get access to our donator forum, which has exclusive shows, podcasts, special features, and all this cool stuff that you can't see because you're not a donator. Oh yeah. Right. Now, another reminder, of course, WoW Radio right now has a Ventrilo server, well worth checking out, kindly provided by UHDservers.com. The WoW Radio Ventrilo server information is on our forums at WCRadio.com. Go join it and speak with the peoples. We also have a Counter-Strike server, details of which are on the forums as well, and we will be shortly having a Savage server. Savage being an awesome game, freeware now, free to download. And I'll be posting some details a little bit later on the gaming discussion boards about how you can get involved in that. So many WoW Radio servers, left side, all this cool stuff to play with our community. Go and do it right now. And also check out Hash or Pound WoW TCG for those who like to play the WoW and Spoils collectible card games. We have a channel for that, and they can play it live using the OCTGN client. Now, we've got that out of the way. I'm going to get back on topic. Now, before the break, I was talking about making raids more accessible to casuals and yet not compromising the difficulty of the content. This was something that was covered briefly in the Four Horsemen podcast, which you should definitely go and check out if you didn't know already. That's Forte, Nihilum, Death and Taxes, and Method all speaking on the same show. And they mentioned, at least Bloodshot particularly mentioned, the idea of adding new ranks of spells acquirable in the Zolaman instance, which would allow people to have a little bit of an easier time with the content while not actually directly nerfing the content. Just making them a little bit more powerful, just making it a little bit easier for them, but without touching the mechanics of the encounter, which of course is the element of the challenge right there, and not giving them better gear. It was a reasonable idea, and it will be interesting to see what your thoughts are on whether or not we even need to make instances more friendly to casuals. I've got a couple of emails on this already, and I didn't even ask for them. That's the best thing. I love our listeners. They're great. They just email in their opinions, and that's exactly what they should do. themurloc@gmail.com. If you feel like saying something, then by all means, send it to me, and I might read it out on the air. Now, Ambro, level 70, Undead Rogue from Twilight Guardians and Kazakh EU says this. He says, "Hi TB, regarding your section on the Karazhan reset timer, I found some of the alternatives unrealistic and cannot see them being implemented, but I did have a suggestion of my own, which would work well for guilds who already have Karazhan farm, and would still be feasible for those more casual guilds still wiping on Curator. Keep the 7-day raid timer. Now, give the raid ability the ability to reset the Karazhan raid instance once he's cleared all bosses, including optional encounters. The instance can only be reset once per maintenance week. So if my guild clears Kara on Wednesday night, we'll be eligible for one more reset, which is great. Aside from Karazhan and Gruul, my guild does nothing else between resets. This would not affect the progress of casual guilds in the slightest, and when they do eventually clear Kara, they also have the option of one reset per maintenance week. Probably not a bad idea. Whether or not clearing all optional bosses is wise, some of my guilds just don't even bother going to Ilhoof. Understandable, really, because you need a warlock with nether protection to really do that encounter properly, and if you don't have one, then yeah, that can be a little bit of a pain. But yeah, I can understand where he's coming from there. And another email here from Dr. Checkmate on Ice Crown US. This is nice and short, and he says, "Hey TB, is it possible to make the timers adjustable to the number of bosses you have down, extending the reset period with each one accomplished?" Yeah, assuming if that was optional anyway. Basically, he's talking about giving people the chance to wipe more on bosses so that they can learn the encounters. Now, I've got a different perspective on all of this, and the problem, in my opinion, simply comes down to instance design. Now, here's a weird thing. If you're arguing, and this is the point that I am arguing, that you need a longer reset time on Karazhan so that guilds have enough of a chance to try Karazhan and get Karazhan on farm and get through the bosses, it's odd to see that the first instance is perhaps the least non-linear. Have a look at, for instance, the way that Tempest Keep is designed. Tempest Keep. Now, technically, the first boss in Tempest Keep is Allah. Guess what? You don't have to do him. You can pawn straight along to Void Reaver, which is a lot easier. Yeah? You just need to look at the design of Tempest Keep. SSC is similar to some degree. It allows you to go to Lurker second, which was originally not what people did. Have a look at what people did. Lurker originally was what was killed before Vash. Yeah, it was it was counted as the second off last boss, but that's no longer the case because of the way that the instance is designed. It's quite easier to bypass encounters in order to try other encounters. Now look at the ultimate example of this, in my honest opinion. Naxxramas. Naxxramas, 4-wing dungeon. You could go to any of the wings. It wouldn't make a blind bit of difference which. You could go and do whatever you wanted. And what you'd find is that guilds often had very odd progress. For instance, you'd find guilds would have killed Anubra Khan and Felina, and then they might have gone and killed Vesuvius, yeah? First boss in the Death Knight wing. And you find people would circumvent certain encounters and go to these different wings. And that was fine. That was cool. It was actually very cool indeed. But it's odd, do you find? It seems like the higher you go up in raiding, the more non-linear it becomes. And that's odd to me because, in my honest opinion, non-linear is more helpful to casual guilds. It allows them to circumvent encounters that they can't maybe necessarily do on a night, maybe because they've got a shortage of classes or just don't want to do, so they can go and try something different and it keeps them interested. Karazhan is not non-linear. I'm sorry, it isn't. You can circumvent some stuff, but you're still having to clear a huge amount of trash, and it's not encouraging you to be non-linear. Now, if you look at, again, let's go back to AQ20 and Zul'Gurub. You'll find that guilds went and killed different bosses and all that kind of thing, and it was fine. You didn't have to clear yet more trash to get to them. You pretty much had equal access. Now, of course, the way Karazhan's designed is you can't really do that. You can't skip trash, you can't really circumvent it. You've got to clear it. And if you're clearing that trash, well, you know what? You might as well go and clear the boss as well. Now, Tempest Keep's kind of like that as well, because obviously you've got to clear more trash to get to Void Reaver. But it's odd to see that Void Reaver being effectively the second boss along is significantly easier than Allah. Look at Karazhan, and that's pretty much not the way it is. No one could really argue that Morose is easier than Achumen. As you go further up the tower, you encounter stuff that's more difficult until you get to Malk, who is arguably the hardest boss in there. So it's very, very linear indeed. Not so difficult, all the way through to difficult. As you go further up the tower, the more difficult things become. The trash becomes more annoying. The bosses become harder. The mechanics become more advanced. And some people might argue that that's fine. That's the way it should be. It allows people to progress up the tower, and it gets progressively more difficult as you go. Now that's fine. Until, of course, guilds hit a block, and the sheer amount of time that they require to clear to that block gets in their way. Especially those, and if people are going to argue that Karazhan needs a shorter raid timer, then they have to look at the design of Karazhan and wonder, well, actually, for some guilds, that's going to be a genuine problem. Now, if Karazhan were non-linear, if Karazhan had more ways to pick and choose what you actually encountered, and had a little bit less trash, then you might not have that problem. But that's just the way Karazhan is. And as far as I can see, there's no real way of fixing that. Karazhan is a big-ass tower. That simple. You either go up the tower, or you just stand where you are and waste your time. That is it. You don't have any other options. And it seems odd to me that the higher level stuff, where you would have thought, well, the bigger guilds really don't have much of a problem with this kind of thing. The bigger guilds, the higher end raiding guilds, you'd have thought wouldn't have had a problem with just going from linear boss to boss to boss, more difficult, more difficult, more difficult, more difficult, and spending the time. They have the time. Yet, for some reason, the higher up you go, the more linear it becomes. And supposedly, although I haven't seen hide nor hair of this, Black Temple was a very non-linear instance. That's what they claim. They claimed it would be a non-linear instance. Now, if we look at Black Temple and Naxxramas as the bigger examples of non-linear instances, and yet for some reason they're right at the top of difficulty, that seems completely the opposite to what it should be, in my honest opinion. It really does. I find that very, very odd indeed. Non-linearity can help casual guilds. It's an ideal way, as far as I'm concerned, of making things a little bit more casual-friendly and not sacrificing or compromising the difficulty and the challenge of those encounters. Now, I've got an email, and it comes from Vathian. He's a level 70 Blood Elf Shadow Priest from the US. And it says this: want a basic design to base your casual friendly but yet still challenge a level 70 raid instances off of 2 words: Scarlet Monastery. I imagine an instance based on the same separate wing, separate instance design that SM introduced. I greatly enjoyed having to run one instance to get a key to unlock another portion of the monastery. It was progression that was helpful but optional nonetheless. If you knew someone else that had the key themselves... I imagine something like this: a winged instance that starts out with a quest that rewards you with an uncharged key of something. Within the winged instance are 6 sub-instances, one of which is marked as a grey-coded wing, 2 red-coded wings, 2 green-coded wings, and 1 is a purple-coded wing. The progression through each instance wing would thereby code your key to be able to access other coloured zones. The progression would go as this: complete the grey zone. The key becomes coded to be able to access both the red zones. Complete one of the red zones, the key becomes coded to access any of the green zones. Complete all the green and red zones, the key becomes coded to access the purple zone. What makes the design work is that the sub-instances are rather small sections, but ultimately they all work towards the progression to get into the purple one, which I imagine to be a large encounter in the same vein as an Ixia, MacDevitt, and a Gruul. I could keep going, but I really want to get this to you in time to be read on air, so if you want to send me more information on the idea, just say so and I'll keep going. Cloak of Shadows 3 times over. That's from Vathian. He's a level 70 Blood Elf Shadow Priest. Yeah. Now, Winged Instance's non-linear design, very good example of casual-friendly content that does not sacrifice on difficulty. Now, some Bleeding Edge and raiders may just sneer at that, because so far, the examples of that kind of thing, particularly the smaller form instances, have all been incredibly easy. Zul'Gurub, AQ20, and then of course you've got the example of Scarlet Monastery right there. But I believe that what we are seeing right now is the idea of Winged Instances, and this started, as far as I'm concerned, with Naxxramas being the bleeding edge content. What I would have to say on that issue is really quite simple. Instance design is incredibly important. Not only does it make the instance more or less difficult, but it makes it more or less friendly. You can look at Karazhan and you can point out the problems, and they're pretty much all based on design, i.e. too much trash, the instance is too big, the instance is too linear. It's all design. All of it is basic design principles. The instance is too big. There's no way of getting around it quickly aside from the Iran teleporter. And even then, you're still running a long-ass time to get to where you need to be. Respawn timers, too short. Trash, too lengthy, too hard, too much of it. Or that's all basic design problems. Now, I can understand that with Black Temple coming in later, and same with Mount Hayal, all of these design things could be fixed. I would hope that Zul'Aman does give the wing design for casuals a new lease of life. I say casual, it's a word that I don't really enjoy using, but it seems to be the only one that fits right now. Making something casual friendly and still challenging is not difficult. You can have casuals, quote unquote. I'd like to just spell that like KAZSHULS. Casuals. You know, these players who just cry and cry about everything. You can make something friendly to someone that can't raid a lot and can raid maybe in small chunks. You can make it friendly to them. You can make it friendly to their guilds. without compromising its difficulty. And people can cry all they like about difficulty. That's their own problem. It's irrelevant. Challenge must be there for people to continue to play the game. Why would you play a game that is not challenging? I can't imagine. It seems like the same kind of people that just cheat their way through games. It's disgraceful in my honest opinion. It's a case of thinking before implementing. Now, I know Karazhan was put in first, and so it has some problems, and I don't think that's fixable. I really do genuinely hope that Zulliman does fix some of these issues. I really do. Because it will give people a reason to raid again and not get frustrated. And I'd love to see players who can't play that much getting access to these instances. I don't play that much anymore. I don't raid all that much anymore, and yet I can still have a shot at Morgan Tidewalker, Allah, Void Reaver, Hydros, Lurker, all of those cool bosses. I just hope everyone can get that. I really do. And come into an environment where dedication and proficiency is more important than the amount of time you spend. This is Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit, rapping the forums time. Yo, 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 folks, shizzle and so forth. It's time for yet another edition of the one and only Rapping the Forums, where we take the worst forum posts we can find and turn them into ill raps that make you hide behind their sofas because you is not ghetto enough up in my grill or something. Yeah. You know how we do. Or so, yeah. It's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Enhanced Shamans fixed in PvP. I would write this in the class forms, but at the state of Enhancement Shamans, post-CBC, nobody at Blizzard reads the thousands of people whining about the state of the class currently. First, what happens to Enhanced Shamans that made them so bad? Pre-TBC. Enhanced Shamans has survivability, as healing and stamina gear wasn't as heavy as it is now. An S heal in typical gear would heal around 32-50% of the player's life. Now it heals 25%. The same goes with other heals, whereby lesser healing ways would do 20-25%. They now only do 10-50%. The simple fact is, if you give a class a 0 survivability, much like a fire mage, you must give the class a high amount of control damage. Now, forget about DW as only rubbish Enhanced Shamans. DW and Enhanced Shaman DPS is not controlled at all. And only through a lucky proc WF does the Shaman hit the opposing player the fixes that need to be made. Toughness, possibly the stupidest talent in the game. Enhanced Shamans are not taxed, but we appreciate the effort, though they are very disappointed at the execution of this talent. We generally don't wear a shield unless I want to destroy our DPS, meaning this talent has what, 450 armor with looking into it. It is maybe 2-3% damage mitigation. This needs to be updated. So we see talents making it 50% damage mitigation and put further down the enhanced tree, so Resto and Ellie Shams can take it and have 1 shield high DPS and 15% less melee damage. Windwalker. This talent needs to be made, and depending on what they do, Ghost Wolf needs to be at least allowed the Shaman to drop all aggro and vanish. However, the invisibility wears out as soon as skill attack is used, the same as all other invisible classes. 5-minute cooldown, similar to Vanish. Improved GW needs to be instant as one's talents are put into it and be able to remove snares. Currently on the Shaman, similar sprint, put a 10-second key on GGW. Is this overpowered? Does it make Enhanced Shaman stronger than Rose? No. Cloak of Shadow, Zones, Tremor and Grounding. The Shaman's no stuns, though a Mace Spec and Axe Spectalis would be appreciated mana/energy. Having your DPS created from energy is still a far superior system than a small mana pool left to Shaman's blind/zap. Sham has no CC. New toughness, not that IMO is only comparable to the high dodge which is achieved by Rogues. As a base agility, it's rubbish and again doesn't have much agi on it due to our AP being based on strength. Obviously BL and WF totem is handy, and when Tremor breaks for teammates as well, he's nice. But this is just what differentiates us from Rogues like the above skills. Available to Rogues different what is this? Differentiators? What's status pressures? We don't know. Stem from us. Now the above comparison of Rogues / Enhanced Shamans was made first as the above talents do stray into their territory. Put in mind, in the majority of WoW gamers' opinions, necessary to balance Enhanced Shamans to the rest of the field. This is complete gibberish.
Vegeta, what does the scouter say about his power level?
father said I should compare us to the other melee DPS classes as not to get ripped by my fellow WoW players and further justify the above fixtures. Warriors, I'm gonna do a survivability here, as that's what the changes are. The shamans can deal along with earlier damage, whilst the warrior's damage comes later. Obviously, if they are teamed together, the warrior through BL and WF without being a spastic will outdamage the shaman. Warrior survivability is through plate and fear. Neither the shaman has. The enhanced shaman gets nothing from heals, as the biggest scrub in the game can out DPS our heals, making them useless, as we have to stop DPS into heal. So if healing was considered to be a way of surviving, we simply become a weighted to die class. The common MS warrior also has limited survivability, but more than the current shaman. The new toughness talent will bring our damage mitigation relatively equal. New GW will work as a lesser form of charge/intercept, and WW, whilst being nifty and not being comparable to shamans, we are trying to avoid damage in PvP. Whilst the warrior is taking damage, that is just helping out pump out more damage in PvP. Comparison to druids, a DPS is comparable when going toe-to-toe with the druid, whilst the druid is cat form. However, with testing anything and taking away the cat's opener, the shaman may have a slight edge. However, should the druid go into bear, the druid's DPS goes down slightly. However, the shaman just tickles the bear druid, whereas the weakness of the enhanced shaman as a supposed hybrid class is again put on show for everyone to see. The shaman will hit the druid with comparable gear, or 250 with his two-hander if he doesn't get dodged, which is a high chance. The shaman who never dodges the bear gets bashed for 1k and white hit 350 to 500. Obviously we can WF, but likely one swing will be dodged and you will be lucky to put out as much damage as the bear bash. Thus the bear is hitting her harder than you are hitting him, despite the fact that he has a lot more HP. It is a no-win situation for the shaman. I'm sorry, this stupidity is killing my head. It hurts. It really, really does. Die in a fire! Bless.